أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نون والقلم وما يسطرون. ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون. وإن لك لأجرا غير ممنون. وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم. فستبصر ويبصرون. فستبصر ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون. إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين. فلا تطع المكذبين. فلا تطع المكذبين. ودوا لو تدهن فيدهنون. ولا تطع كل حلاف مهين. هماز مشاء بنميم مناع للخير معتد أثيم. عتل بعد ذلك زنيم. أن كان ذا مال وبنين. إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين. سنسمه على الخرطوم. إنا بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذ أقسموا ليصرمنها مصبحين ولا يستثنون. فطاف عليها طائف من ربك وهم نائمون. فأصبحت كالرميم. فتنادوا مصبحين أن اغدوا على حرثكم إن كنتم صارمين. فانطلقوا وهم يتخافتون ألا يدخلنها اليوم عليكم مسكين. وغدوا على حرد قادرين. فلما رأوها قالوا إنا لضالون. بل نحن محرومون قال أوسطهم ألم أقل لكم لولا تسبحون قالوا سبحان ربنا إنا كنا ظالمين فأقبل بعضهم على بعض يتلاومون صدق الله العلي العظيم في كتابه الكريم المجيد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum brothers and their listeners. I just read this ayah of Surah Al-Qalam. It has a beautiful story in there which is related to patience. The story is regarding a few brothers who had a father, and their father used to, usually from his farm, he used to have extra and he used to give to the poor, to the needy. So when their father passed away, they decided together so that when the time comes to get the yield from the farm, that they will not give the poor anything. They will make all profit. So when the morning came, they all came. They said, "Are you going together? Are we going? Come on, let's go. Let's go do the yield. Let's get the fruits and what can be yielded." And in the night, they as they were walking in the morning, was very early in the morning, they were looking around. They didn't want to be seen. They didn't want anyone to know. So no one from the poor would think, "Oh, today is the day they're going to start and we should go to them. They want to go and finish the job before anyone goes there." So in the night, they didn't know that God has sent someone to burn the whole farm because of their their aim, what they wanted to do. When they got there, they found out that it is all burnt, it is all gone. They said, "We have nothing to do. We've lost. In fact, we are the poor ones. We actually don't have anything anymore." The most balanced of the brothers, he said, "Didn't I tell you to do tasbih," which in here I believe to follow and don't forget about God. When you don't forget God, you follow what God told you. They said, "Subhana Rabbina, we have done bad to the others." So they came to each other saying, "Why did you tell me to do this? Why did you, think of the bad idea or the sin?" They said, "Oh, woe upon us. We thought we are above others." Sadaqallahu al-Ali al-Azim. So, but what is the human made of? We're made of trab, dirt, sand, which is, when you see someone as Bani Adam, you know that they are humble, because we are made of earth. And if someone is thinking they're above others, they're not humble. They're not called Bani Adam. They're something else. Thank you for listening, and you're welcome.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. ولعنة الله على الأعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Congratulations first and foremost on this joyous and glorious occasion as we enter the month of Sha'baan and celebrate the births of three of some of the best personalities in the religion of Islam: Imam Hussain عليه السلام, Imam Ali Al-Sajjad عليه السلام, and of course Hadhrat Abbas Alamdar, the flag bearer in Karbala, the flag bearer of Islam. May the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon them, true embodiments of the spirit of Islam. Now, inshallah ta'ala, as tonight's focus is on patience and forbearance, we'll be focusing specifically on these three personalities, and inshallah, as Brother Saeed opened the discussion, we'll elaborate further as we go on through the night. For the love of our dear Imam Hussain, Abu Fadl Abbas, and Imam Al-Sajjad, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, Brother Saeed mentioned a very interesting story, and I found it kind of enlightening in terms of it immediately clicked in my mind the parallel of today, because you have, of course, the most prevalent crisis in the Gaza Strip taking place, and these individuals committing these evil atrocities, these horrors. What are they doing right now? They're blaming each other. They're in chaos, they're in shambles. Their entire system has been struck so hard, and they don't know what to do. This is what ultimately becomes of evil, and inshallah they'll suffer a much greater defeat when all is said and done. Now, to lay the foundation for this subject, I'd like to ask the very simple question: why are we so impatient? Why are people so impatient? What's the underlying reason? And inshallah, through that, we'll establish a foundation for the continuation of the discussion. So one of the key reasons why people are impatient is procrastination. Constantly delaying what they have to commit themselves to, their targets, their commitments, their deadlines, everything that takes precedence in their life, delaying it up until the last minute. And instead of focusing on what's important, engaging in mundane and useless activity like an addiction, video games, trying to get the highest score, trying to finish the game, drama series, TV series, anything like that. And because we do this, when we reach that last minute, that critical moment, we're jumping all over ourselves. We're trying to rush, be hasty in order to get that, meet that commitment, meet that target. Now, when we take a little bit of time out of our daily schedule and plan things out properly, this is a much different story. And one of the best examples of this, particularly for the youngsters present today, is exam preparation. I'm sure all of us, at least me, I've been in a situation where I've delayed, procrastinated, and then at that final week or that final 2 weeks, I'm trying to cram information into my mind, and I'm totally all over myself. I'm jumping over myself. Now, this action of rushing, being hasty, it imbues a sense of impatience within you, and it becomes a kind of behavioral trait, a habit. It builds on from there, and it reaches the point where it's no longer just impatience in terms of meeting commitments, but impatience in your daily life and daily routine, in the little things as well. So, inshallah, with that said, with that foundation, inshallah, we'll continue further. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, one of the key issues is that when you behave in this way, as we mentioned, it's not just impatience when it comes to the important stuff, but also the little things in life. And it takes the significance away. For example, when we are spending time with a sick grandmother or with a brother we haven't seen for years, when we're addicted to something else, there's a thought prevailing in our mind. I just want to get this over with, get this done with, so I can go back to my whatever vice or addiction it might be. Even if you're trying to meet the important religious commitments, and this is why we mentioned the verse earlier, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sta'inu bis-sabri was-salat. O you who believe, find comfort in patience and prayer. Inna Allaha ma'as-sabirin. Allah is with the ones who are patient. Now, there's a direct link between patience and prayer. This is something so important because It's the same thing with prayer. The same concept applies. We're jumping on ourselves. We're trying to finish that prayer as quickly as possible, and it takes the meaning and significance away. There's so much potential in prayer, and we have discussed this in previous youth programs as well, the importance of prayer. Of course, just to briefly put it, there are so many spiritual benefits. There are so many mental health benefits. It helps advance us, bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, provide a means of guidance and purpose in our lives. We're communicating with Allah the Almighty, the most sublime. And yet we're doing so in a half-hearted manner. We're not truly making that gains out of it. If we're not truly speaking to Allah during our prayer, it's less likely that He's going to respond to our prayers, because our prayers are all about seeking Allah's mercy, forgiveness, and guidance. It's about truly testifying to Allah's oneness, to His sublime nature. If we forget these things and we're just trying to get it done as quickly as possible, we don't gain that ma'rifah, that recognition of God. We don't gain that guidance, that forgiveness, that mercy. So once again, this is of the utmost importance. And just to finish off, 3 brief examples from our beloved personalities for tonight. Imam Hussain alayhi salam, on his journey towards Kufa, Hur is ordered by Ibn Ziyad la'natullah alayh to intercept the caravan of Imam Hussain. He is approaching Imam Hussain with a contingent of 1,000 soldiers, and Imam Hussain meets him in the journey. Hur is ordered to take Imam Hussain prisoner and bring him back to Ibn Ziyad, but Imam Hussain refuses to be taken prisoner. He suggests that he could go somewhere else away from Kufa, but Hur refuses this, and so they come to an argument, and ultimately they agree to a halfway point, which is why he ended up in Karbala. Nonetheless, during this encounter, some of the military advisors of Imam Hussain, they urge him to fight against the army of Hur, to fight the enemy at this point, but Imam Hussain refuses. From a military point of view, from a strategic point of view, they should attack, they should finish the enemy and press their advantage. But Imam Hussain, just like his father Amir al-Mu'mineen, he does not act upon short-term gains. He acts upon the long-term gains, the principles of Islam being upheld and being a source of guidance for generations and generations to come. This is what truly counted. He did not fight. He did not draw the first blood. Doing so would be against Islam. He gave water to the army of Hur from his own caravan. Just like Imam Ali before him, as Brother Mustafa was mentioning in our last youth panel. Battle of Siffin, when Muawiyah la'natullah alayhi, when his forces are occupying the wells, they refuse to give water to Imam Ali's army. When Imam Ali's army drive them back, Imam Ali shares that water with the army of Muawiyah against the advice of his military advisors. Again, principle always comes first to these personalities. And in the case of the army of Hur, Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam was the one responsible for distributing the water to these enemy forces. And this is why he is called As-Saqqa, the distributor of water. And of course, in the case of Abu Fadl al-Abbas, we see an incredible moment of patience and perseverance in the battle of Karbala, when he is at the brink of the Euphrates River, the Furat. He gathers up the water in his palms, but he has such patience and forbearance. He pauses, he thinks, he remembers the tears, the anguish, the sorrows of Sayyida Sukaina salamullahu alayha, of Imam al-Hussain. Even though he is in misery at this point, it's said that his heart feels like burning ash. That's how thirsty he is, yet he does not drink the water out of love of Imam al-Hussain, out of his principles. And Imam Al-Sajjad alayhi salam, final example, on the road to Damascus, after the horrific tragedies of Karbala, he encounters a man who abuses him verbally and praises Yazid. This man calls Yazid Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Al-Sajjad does not reply hastily or angrily. He shows that same patience and forbearance which is the subject of tonight's discussion. He lets him finish, he listens, and then Imam Al-Sajjad does not respond in kind. He does not respond the same way. Because Islam tells us, repel evil with that which is better. And so Imam Al-Sajjad responds by reciting verses of the Quran which extol the virtues of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And he tells this man who he truly is, the son of the Holy Prophet, the son of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. And the man is in tears. He realizes that he was in the wrong. He pledges his allegiance to Imam Al-Sajjad and is later executed. Now, these three examples, of course, they are beyond our comprehension. They are beyond our imagination. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them as a benchmark and a guidance for us to aspire towards. So inshallah, when we walk away tonight, let us try and take those footsteps in that noble direction and reach nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah ta'ala. And with that, I'd like to pass it to my dear brother Saeed, followed by brother Mustafa Bismi, with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yes. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. After research in the Shia Islam, I was able to find, because Brother Hussain told us the topic will be patience, that there are three types of patience. Patience comes first with obedience. You do what God tells you to do, which is like waking up for the Fajr. Sometimes it seems like we have to have patience for the obedience of what God tells us. But when we look at Ahlul Bayt, it's different. Obedience. And then there is the refraining. You have to understand that patience is not always going to take time. Sometimes patience take the pressure of decision, or you're going to avoid that sin or that haram food or that haram look, or you're going to avoid, it's the decision, the pressure of the decision, avoiding sin. And the third type is patience during hardship. Sometimes patience requires time. If there is a Gaza war right now, people in Gaza should have patience, help each other. It needs time until the bala, the hardship, the calamity will be, gone. So when it comes to obedience, it's very different how we see obedience of God than the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and the examples Brother Hussain just gave. Imam Ali alayhi salam, for example, says, الصبر على البلاء أفضل من العافية في الرخاء. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, patience during a hardship or calamity, when you're studying hard, when you have to, work hard, patience during calamity is better than well-being in prosperity. You know how people say, I want to be happy, I want to have well-being, I want to retire. Imam alayhi salam says, no, this is better than that. It's like you have two values and one is bigger or better than the other. Why is that? Imam alayhi salam says, because the patience, I'm translating this, during, prosperity and well-being is having an advantage in materialistic things. For example, your body, you have an advantage in there. There is advantage for material, prosperity and well-being. But patience during calamity and hardship, it's going to have an advantage to help you grow spiritually, to help you grow psychologically, consciously. You'll complete your personality. You'll be a stronger person inside. You'll have a stronger will, motive, commitment as you go through patience for example, the traffic or studying. Basically, humans learn during patience. And they also asked Imam Ali alayhi salam other questions, such as, which one would be better? The akhirat, in sitting in heaven, or in here, sitting in the mosque, or having obedience, ta'ah for Allah? Imam alayhi salam says, I would exchange hours of heaven for an hour of earth, having obedience for God. Hours. Because in earth, I am for the happiness of Allah. I'm doing what I'm doing to make God happy about me, to say thank you to Allah. Whereas in the akhirah, that's happiness for me. So we see patience, and we're actually very lucky to even have this. We have the better quality. It's a two-sided coin. It's a patience and well-being and prosperity. So basically, what we get from this is that we have to practice tolerance and patience. We have to practice to endure. We have to practice to afford to give to the needy, even if we have to start small. We have to practice to start reading a book, to sustain an activity we're doing that's good, to bear the weight of responsibility. For example, you have a strong body and people ask you to help them, or your family asks you to help them, carry things. Or you have time and you're smart. You could help your people in community to, do the things they need for the community. If you don't do this, there is the other side of the coin. You might start to lose that capacity and the ability. So it's good for your own sake to have patience. And lastly, patience is to be balanced with the aim. If the aim is really high, you should also have patience. For example, Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, he had a body that drives him to drink. The thirst is driving his body to want to drink. But then he has a self that wants him to stand with Imam Hussain, to stand with the cries of the children. He wants to stand with them by not drinking. No, I will not drink until they drink. Or self, and he says the other things. I'll cut it short. Thank you so much for listening. That's my part of the patience. I'll give the microphone to brother Bismi, Mustafa Bismi.
صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So the topic about patience, what really struck me about this term patience, when I was a young kid, I remember my cousin was like, why do you have to be patient in Islam? Like, what's the point of it? Like, what does that mean? Just bite your tongue or something when you're angry? Like, what is the inherent point of just being patient? Is it for the sake of looking like you're a sage or something like that? And that's what I was thinking when I was a kid, because I remember Surah Al-Asr. When I was a kid, every auntie, beta, recite and I was just reciting, I don't know what I was saying. You know what I mean? And I was like, why does the chapter talk about wal asr, in time, innal insana lafi husr, indeed mankind is at loss. That's a huge statement. You know what I'm saying? Illa alladhina amanu, except those who believe. It's a really interesting statement, because I remember people used to say, like, what's the point of religion? Why can't you just be an atheist that's like a good person? Right? And that verse is talking about, indeed mankind is at loss, illa alladhina amanu, except those who believe, wa amilu salihati, and they pray, which is odd. Because prayer, who does that help except you and your connection with God? Who does that help? Right? Why is mankind at loss at that state? Can't you just be a good person and like smile to your neighbor and pay your taxes or something? Why do you have to do that? وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, and those who believe in the truth, وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and those who have patience, which is a really interesting trait. There's a lot of traits out there, like generosity and kindness and this, that, but patience is a unique trait that it's important to withhold through hardships. One of the most interesting ahadith that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen has said, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And I want you to go home and I want you to think about this ahadith, because you have to ponder over it. He says, verily the fruit of conviction, right? Conviction is like certainty. You're having certainty about an outcome. The fruit of conviction is patience. Meaning through that conviction, the blessing that you bear from it is that you know its eventual outcome and you have patience for that. Do you know what I'm saying? You can see, like, in times, even in the world around us, look at, if you go to Auburn, you know what's crazy? So I grew up in Blacktown and I moved to Castle Hill, right? And I grew up coming to Auburn and Bankstown and this, that, right? What's crazy here is the traffic in Auburn, bro. It's like a third world country or something. There's no traffic rules here. There's no like laws. People are like double parking and this, that. And then every street corner you go, there's a bundle of flowers and a photo of some guy's kids. You don't see that in other suburbs. You see that here. Why is it that why is someone always tailgating in Auburn? Right? Why does he have to do that? Like, why do they put themselves at risk? Like Brother Saeed was talking about, there's multiple different types of patience. One common patience is like a lot of people cannot even endure their own alone time in their mind. When they're alone driving, they get extremely impatient. Right? And that is as a result of no conviction. It's a very interesting concept. A concept where people, like most white people I know growing up, they need to do something on a Friday night. They need to go drinking, they need to go to the clubs. They can't be alone. And I remember when I was a young kid, I used to be a bit restless, and my mom used to say, it's not the trait of a believer, Mustafa, to be impatient and restless. And I always have to occupy myself playing basketball or something. I couldn't just sit alone and just think. And I didn't know what my mom was talking about when she said that. But it's very true. The trait of the believer, because of his wisdom, he has conviction. And because of his conviction, he has patience. It is a byproduct of the inherent traits of a believer. Imam Jafar as-Sadiq عليهم الصلاة والسلام has said, inherently within the believer, the true believer, he is patient. Whereas all other people have to exercise patience because they do not have conviction. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil. To all good merits in Islam, you'll notice that there are particular merits that the Imams have talked about. And there are particular merits that are inherently the traits of the believers. For example, generosity. For example, cleanliness. It's a very important one. We can talk about that for a bit. You know what I mean? You ever go to the Islamic mosque and the bathrooms are like, good Lord on heaven, I don't know what's going on. There's like, it's najasat everywhere. Why is that in the Muslim mosque? Bro, if you go to a white guy's house, it's clean. He doesn't have any rulings on mustahabat and najasat, and he's got nothing of that. And his bathrooms are clean. I went to my friend's church. The cleanest bathrooms I've ever seen. There's like 10,000 people in their church. Do you know what I mean? Every mosque you go to in a Muslim center, it's so najis, bro. We got 100,000 ahadith from Muhaqqiq al-Hili explaining the najasat, and we're like the worst at it. Your Christian friends, they don't have jurisprudential rulings. They don't have fiqh, and they're good at it, right? That's another thing. Anyway, there are traits of a believer, right? Najasat is one, tahara is one, generosity is one, kindness is one, patience is one. But you have to understand, these are not random, trivial attributes that just so happens to represent some like aura of a sageist kind of person. That's how I used to think when I was a kid. I would think like, why are people sitting very with good akhlaq? Why is good akhlaq part of your religion? Why did the Holy Prophet said, I have not come for anything but to teach mankind akhlaq? Why is that such a foundational part of your religion? And why is patience such a foundational part of your religion? This is what I want to teach you. These are attributes of wisdom. If you look at what's very interesting about, if we want to talk about Gaza, what's very interesting, nobody supports Gaza except atheists and Muslims. Do you notice that? Do you know what I'm talking about, Talib? If you go to the protest, you see the white guy with the tote bag, and then you see the Muslims. It's like, how did he get there? You know why? Because the ultimate end goal for atheism is using your reasoning and your intellect and not being affected by biases to reach your moral conclusion. And they concluded that killing innocent people in Gaza is bad, and that's why they stand in protest. Whereas a lot of Christians, because they get influenced by Republicans in America, they're iffy about that. A lot of Muslims, because they're influenced by, the Shias are with Iran, so we can't really support what they're, you know what I mean? Their bias is opposed to that, right? Because of their inherent beliefs. But as a Shia Muslim, we can't allow these inherent beliefs to influence our ideologies. And that's why, what I'm trying to tell you is, particular merits that we have in our religion, wisdom and being one of them that foundates patience, it must come from conviction. And that's why the Ahlul Bayt have said, indeed our Shi'as are more patient than us. When someone said, Ya Imam, how is that possible? He says, because we are patient with our knowledge, whereas they are not. They don't have the knowledge and they're patient. Do you know what I'm saying? When the Imam was referring to the return of Al-Qa'imun, the 12th Imam, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The Imams have full knowledge about the return of the Imams, except the end time. The date, specifically the date when the 12th Imam returns, the Imams Ahlul Bayt don't know. In fact, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq has said, anyone who claims to know when Al-Qa'im will return is a liar, because indeed Allah has not bestowed us with that knowledge. But all the other signs are known, right? And then the Imam says, indeed our Shia are more patient than us because we know of these signs. We know when morality will slip within society. We know when crime will increase. We know when things like the LGBT will increase, what error that will increase at a widespread. It's never happened throughout civilization until recently. The Imams know of these signs. We are grappling with these ideas and how we're going to teach our kids. The Imams already knew about how the Shias will be, right? We don't have full conviction. We don't know what 30 years from now looks like. We really don't. We don't know if the Gaza Strip will be completely obliterated. We don't actually know 10 years from now, 20 years, we have no clue what will happen. You get what I'm saying? And so our patience is not with conviction. The Ahlul Bayt has patience with conviction. And that patience is knowing that eventual outcome will come. Some things in life we don't have that conviction. And so what I'm trying to say is to strengthen like I said, the fruit of conviction is patience. And many things in life you can attain conviction and understanding for. And that will inherently give you patience. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Jazakallah khairan, dear brother Mustafa and brother Saeed as well. It's interesting you mentioned that the cleanliness in churches, even in the bathrooms. I think this center is generally much better, alhamdulillah. So inshallah, maybe other centers can try and take after this example, keep everything clean. As brother Mustafa was saying, Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, all these scholars, entire books on najasat and the rules. If the Christians don't have this and their standards are higher than us, it means we have a long way to go, a big journey towards improvement. So inshallah ta'ala, in the coming years, we can go back to our roots and try and take things to a much higher level, to a much higher standard. Now, brother Mustafa also mentioned taking the time alone with yourself to reflect. This is one of the quintessential actions in Islam. I shouldn't call it actions, but just taking the time, contemplating, reflecting over the world around us, over the history, over our actions, pausing and reflecting, not just doing things in life, not just constantly engaging in activity, because this allows us to arrive at thoughts and conclusions which we could never do otherwise. Now, there's a next level to this, which I always love to mention, and that next level is sharing those thoughts and reflections with like-minded people, especially like-minded people that might see things from a different angle, who might have had a different background than you. They see something that you might not see, and you see something likewise that they might not, and you build each other's thoughts in this way. And alhamdulillah, that's what the panel discussions are all about, bouncing unique ideas from different perspectives of people from different backgrounds. You know, brother Saeed, I believe he's been in Australia a couple years. 6 years. Brother Mustafa is born here pretty much, I think, right? Born here. I've been here for quite a while as well, 20 years. But alhamdulillah, we got different backgrounds, different experiences. But Alhamdulillah, that's what it's all about, sharing those. And it actually reminds me of a verse in the Quran which we mentioned last week, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. That Allah has made you into nations and tribes so that you may recognize one another. Ta'aruf. All of these nations, these tribes, these backgrounds and colors. This is something Brother Mustafa mentioned last week as well. Interact with believers who are from Iraq, from Lebanon, from Afghanistan. Intermix. And that really builds a much stronger and better community. And this lives, that verse in the Quran. That's really what it's all about, you know. And Imam Hussain himself in Karbala, the small contingent that was gathered with him, they hailed from different backgrounds. There were people who were of a Christian background. There were people who were African, dark-skinned. There were Arabs, there were Persians, all different backgrounds of the very best people in society gathered together. And alhamdulillah, that was one of the best parts of one of the most beautiful aspects of Karbala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It's interesting, Brother Mustafa also mentioned that the Christians are often brainwashed when it comes to Zionism. They've essentially drunk the Republican Kool-Aid. This Zionism is, of course, a very modern ideology. It has nothing to do with either Judaism or Christianity. It's a political ideology that's politically motivated. Just like fundamentalist Muslims, people like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, they abuse the teachings of Islam in order to act a certain way. It's the same thing with Zionism. And that's why there are still Jews and Christians out there who recognize the folly of Zionism, who recognize how disgusting this ideology is, the barbarism it has created, especially considering the fact that throughout history, Jews were exiled and expelled from Christian lands again and again. The Spanish Inquisition is one of the most prominent examples of this. And it was the Muslims who gave them refuge and shelter. But Zionism did the exact opposite. The people who gave refuge to the Jews, they were then expelled and displaced the same way the Jews had been many, many times across history. And many of the Palestinians themselves are Christian, and they suffer the same way the Muslims do. Hardly any different. They're spat upon. And yet it's what I call the arrogance of Western Christianity. This intrinsic arrogance where you look down upon the Eastern Christians unless they're basically your clone or puppet, unless they think likewise, unless they just shut off their brains and follow you blindly. That's essentially the main problem today. And inshallah, that being said, that kind of relates to the upcoming segment of the program, which is, of course, the examples of impatience and rushing things in our day and age, particularly when I think about interviews, news articles, conversations, dialogues, debates. It becomes all about trying to disprove the other person and trying to establish your position. And there's not much focus given to the spirit of learning, growing from each other's thoughts, the way we're essentially doing now or trying to do now. It becomes more about just how would I put it? Just a game, essentially. You're just trying to win. And there's no focus, there's no commitment towards what is true, towards resolving the problem at hand, towards finding common ground. Now, as we mentioned the example of Imam Al-Sajjad alayhi salam, this was similar to the example of Imam Al-Hassan, which we also mentioned last week. Imam Al-Hassan was verbally abused by a Syrian man who allied himself with Muawiyah. He was verbally abused, he was insulted, and yet Imam Al-Hassan alayhi salam, he let him finish. He did not interrupt him. And then he responded in a graceful and beautiful manner. He was kind and generous towards this man. If you are hungry, we will feed you to your fullest. If you require shelter, we will give you shelter, etc., etc. We discussed this last week. This is what is of the utmost importance in Islam. Now, when it comes to dialogue, we often find ourselves caught up in the same trap as our intellectual adversaries. They interrupt, so we interrupt. They try to score cheap points, we try to do the same thing. They engage in ad hominem attacks, which essentially means personal attacks. You're not focusing on the subject, you're attacking the person. You're trying to talk about some controversy in his life. Now the question is how to approach this, and this is very difficult. This is where we have to look to our imams, peace and blessings be upon them. And a lot of people, they say, oh, you know, how the imams behaved, it was, for us, it's unrealistic. It doesn't make sense for us, because if you try and do something like that in this day and age, if someone hits you and you're acting kindly towards them, benevolently towards them, if someone insults you, it's not going to work apparently. That's the idea. But in my experience, I shouldn't say hit because that becomes physical assault. But nonetheless, in my experience, what I've seen in many of the news interviews, sometimes one person doesn't even have to make the best points. He simply acts in a graceful and becoming manner, essentially, and most of the people are on his side. He doesn't necessarily have to win the argument or disprove everything the other person is saying. It's sometimes more about the mannerisms, the character of the person engaging. Now, it's all about, as we mentioned, listen to the other person, let them finish. Even if they interrupt, don't do the same thing. And we mentioned the example of Finkelstein and Alan Dershowitz. Norman Finkelstein, we mentioned him I think 4 or 5 times in these youth panel programs. Person of a Jewish background, his parents were Holocaust survivors, and everyone on both his mother's and father's side were exterminated in the Nazi death camps. And of course he is very, very heavily on the pro-Palestinian, amongst the pro-Palestinian academics. Now he engaged with Alan Dershowitz in a debate. Now this is why I mentioned honing your craft in a debate is of key importance. Letting the other person finish, but also responding in the most effective and convincing manner with the fewest words possible. Because in debates, you have a very limited spectrum of time. And this is important because you might have these conversations in your life as well, in school. Equip yourself with the necessary knowledge when it comes to these things. Train yourself to respond effectively and with good character, with good mannerisms. This is a verse in the Quran, directly debating with others in the best of manners. You see this verse in Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, verse 125. Now, one example of this which I loved, in the recent interview between Alan Dershowitz and Norman Finkelstein, Alan Dershowitz mentioned the point that, you know, Israel offered the Palestinians a state 6 or 7 times in the past, and they always refused. It's proof that Palestinians are the ones who are uncompromising, refusing to make peace. This is what he said. And Norman Finkelstein responded in a very effective and quick manner. All he said was this. He said, look, I can go over each of those incidents in detail and disprove what you're saying, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'll say something a lot simpler. Every single year in the UN, there is something called the Peaceful Resolution to the Palestinian Question. Essentially, what it says is that the Palestinians should have a state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip with full sovereignty and full independence, control of East Jerusalem, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip. Every year this question comes up in the UN. All of the countries in the world say yes to that question, except for Israel, America, and a couple of American client states in the islands. those areas, the Polynesian islands, you know, Samoa, Tonga, Nauru, those countries. Essentially, Israel says no, and the US acts as their, essentially a mafia lawyer, abusing their veto power to prevent that. So that's how Finkelstein responded. Essentially, he's saying Israel is the one preventing that peace process when they have that opportunity every year. Not 6 or 7 times, because Dershowitz mentioned they refused 6 times. Every year since 1967, when the 6-Day War happened, that peaceful question to the Palestinian problem, it rose up in the UN. How many years is that? Nearly 60 years. You say Palestinian refused a state or refused peace 6 or 7 times, apparently. But you can reverse that. Israel refused peace nearly 60 times. You can reverse that completely. Something simple. Of course, the details are a lot more broad. And inshallah, maybe we'll get to discuss that in another moment. But for now, inshallah, I just want to conclude and pass it back to my brothers with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
It's very beautiful to have sabr, patience, and there are, you could say, at least 2 types. Sabrun jamil, the beautiful patience, where if you have a calamity, you say, thank God, I will stand and I'll thank God. And there is the ugly patience, where you say, oh, this is God's fault. Oh, this is my parents' fault, my God's fault. Why did this happen? So, alhamdulillah, we are seeing that beautiful patience from the Palestinian people in the Gaza. Very beautiful as it is being seen. As the brother Hussein was talking, he's saying they're attacking Gaza. The reason you will find online why they're attacking Gaza is, because to defend a proportional response. That is their reason. Usually, when we look back in history, there is a reason given to why the Abbasi took over. The Abbasi, the government of Abbasi killed most of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So, the Shia, the Muslims, most people who love Ahlul Bayt stood with them. Although also the people who hated Bani Umayyad. And the Abbasi had also a saying. The saying was to get revenge for Imam Hussain. They are victims. We want to get revenge. And they said, we are a representative. So whatever reason they use, sometimes the reason can be misleading. Sometimes the reason, just like now, proportionate response, we're doing a good thing. But in fact, actually, what they're doing is different from their reason. And only few people can see that. Only few people can see clarity when there is so much happening. Thank you. الصبر, according to Imam Ali alayhi salam, الصبر من الإيمان بمنزلة الرأس من الجسد. Patience from belief, we're believers inshallah, all of us going to heaven. In fact, Prophet Muhammad puts his hand on the shoulder of Imam Ali alayhi salam and tells him, don't worry, O Ali, you and your Shia are guaranteed heaven. So, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, patience from belief is like having the head from the body. If the head is lost, the body is dead. If the sabr, the patience is lost, there is no belief. You can't activate belief without sabr. So it is not something like, I think I'm going to have patience today, maybe tomorrow a bit less. No, it is a requirement to be a believer. A requirement to do almost any good deed. I'll give you one example from Imam Ali alayhi salam and one example from Imam Hussain alayhi salam. The example from Imam Ali is that I'm sure you all heard the story when there was a Khandaq, Prophet Muhammad had ordered the Sahaba to dig the earth around the Muslims because the Kuffar has just decided we're just going to finish Islam and kill their Prophet and we don't want a new religion to come to us. So the Prophet Muhammad ordered the Sahaba to dig a dig around the front frontage of the Medina. Was it Medina or Mecca?
It was Medina.
Medina, yeah, I remember it. And put fire in there, and it was very wide. No horse, no man, no one could have just jumped there except the strongest man. He is equal to 1,000 men. Very big, very strong. He is what you probably call Hercules, maybe. This example, Prophet Muhammad said, this is the all of kufr. This is all of kufr. He's representing all of disbelief, all of the kufr. And when Imam Ali alayhi salam went to him, Prophet Muhammad said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He said, all of Iman, all of Islam is represented by Imam Ali. So all of Kufr is going to fight all of Islam. If Imam Ali alayhi salam goes, we are all gone. There is no Islam anymore. So this will make the decision of the future from that point in time. What happened was, things happened. Imam alayhi salam had a conversation with him, invited him to Islam, gave him 3 choices. Anyway, so what happened in the end is that Imam alayhi salam got to his head to finish him up and to win. But we see Imam alayhi salam, and it's all dusty, walks out of there without killing him. And people are asking why. Is he showing off? Is there something happened? It's so dusty. He got out of the dust. We see that guy's on the floor. Then he goes back. He walks around, goes back and finishes him. And everyone is asking, Ya Rasulullah, what's going on? He tells them, wait until Ali comes and he will tell you. When he came, he told them, when they asked him, because he spat. And I am there to finish him up. But I will not do it when there is a bit of anger involved in my action. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, his actions throughout all his life is not going to involve anger. He might get angry, but he will not do it for God. If you want to pray, if you want to do anything good, even if when you're driving, for example, towards a mosque or anything, driving anywhere, you shouldn't act with anger. You shouldn't act with anger to do anything for God or maybe everything in your life. It's possible to reach that level. One example is when someone, this happened to me, once took my parking space and I held off. I didn't do anything. I just gave them the sign. It took them time. They got out. They felt really good. I felt really good. If it was anyone else, and I really wanted to do it, but because of my anger, I said I will not press the horn. And from that time onwards, I started to understand, it's possible to not do something when you're angry. And it felt very good. And that's probably what patience is about, as Brother Hussain was saying, to not hit them back if they hit you or not say something else. Or you're doing it out of anger, just wait. Another thing is Al-Khadr alayhi salam, who's still alive since the time of Moses until now. You could say at least 5,000-6,000 years he's old. He told Prophet Moses alayhi salam, and this is in the Quran, how are you going to be patient, O Moses, for what you don't have an extension of knowledge about? We get this to Ahlul Bayt straight. I'm not going to spend much time there. Prophet Muhammad, he tells Bilal, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the times are a bit hard or they're in the desert, he tells Bilal, "Arahna biha ya Bilal." So after like going, doing a journey or doing something, he tells Bilal, "Come on, Bilal, make us relax with it." Means do the adhan, so we pray. So when they pray, the Prophet and the Ashab relax. It is a prosperity, it's a well-being for them. Whereas when we see the prayer time, is it really the prayer time yet? Sometimes, not always. Do we really have to pray the night prayer? Do we really have to wake up for the morning? It's like we're not feeling the spirit the Prophet is feeling. When it comes to death, and I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about it when it's the birthday of the Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam Hussain stands in front of the people who were there to kill him in Karbala, and he tells them, and he's seeing behind him, like you see, Imam Hussain is seeing behind the people who are opposing him, and they are seeing behind him. What is Imam Hussain alayhi salam seeing behind them? They can't see behind themselves, and he can't see behind himself, except he knows. He tells them, I'm not seeing death except happiness. And living with these evildoers except agonizing and difficult. What are they saying? They're saying that death, they're scared of death. And living with these evil sinners, it's a good thing. They want it. So having the knowledge is really important. We might see death as we don't like it because we haven't done really well for our akhirat. But if we have more knowledge and more certainty and we do better, of course, which would require patience, then we were able to have a better view of Imam Hussain and Prophet Muhammad, salamullahi عليهم. Do I have a few more minutes to complete more? Because I don't want to, because we came here to learn about patience, I just need a bit of patience from you so that we can talk about it. Allah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. Sometimes the affliction, I will actually read the Quran first. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. 2 ayat from the Quran came regarding patience, and I just thought we should not miss it. In the Surah Al-Mulk, 2nd ayah. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. It is He, God, who created death and life to test you. Which of you is best indeed? And He is exalted in might and forgiving. So God created us to afflict us with tests and hardships. In fact, someone was praying to God, asking God to not give hardship to fulan, someone. Imam alayhi salam told him, you have prayed to death upon this person. Don't pray like this. Don't ask God to not give any hardship for this person. They will die. That's their reason to be here. So our reason to be here, God created us to give us hardship, calamity, difficulty, affliction. No one in the face of this earth, from the children of Prophet Adam alayhi salam, doesn't have any affliction, even if it's an internal one, even if it's a mental, or they can't have children. The good people will deal with this the good way. They'll learn from it. The bad people or the rich people, they'll still have to deal with it. So no one here doesn't have any sort of affliction. The other ayah of the Quran the Shaykh was using, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. And we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and the loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patients. In fact, the Shaykh says being patient is a way of saying thank God. When you see it that way, then you'll be able to do more. We're very lucky to be living so that we can thank God for the good things we will be receiving. One interesting point is that the Quran is saying God created us not to see if we are failing and passing. It is to see which one will do good and which one will do better. So I just found that an interesting point. Final point, and which has a story. As I said, patience sometimes will be required with affliction which is inside you. And that could be mental, for example, having a forgetful memory or bipolar or any other thing like that, which is like micro. It can be chemical in the body, and it could be, from the short term. If the person is blind, for example, that's physical. Anyway, so it could also be from an external source, the affliction. If the affliction, say sometimes you have to study for a test, you have to have some patience. But some people say, why did my parents even bring me to life? Those big questions. And the thing is like this. If somebody took you from a ship and threw you in the water, are you really going to think about who did this, why did this to me, and you're going to think about it, and there is a nearby ship, you could just swim to it and survive? So I'm sure most people here would swim to the ship and survive. So this is the situation we're in. Existing in this world is like someone just threw you in this hardship to let you grow, and this is best for you so that you can appreciate heaven. And I would like to give the microphone to Brother Mustafa Bismi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farjhum. Very interesting points Brother Saeed brought up about patience and about like aspirations for life. One interesting thing is that I've been thinking about is one of the signs of the return of the Imam is that people become extremely depressed. There are hadith that say that people will pass by the graves and they'll be envious of the people in the graves. They said, like, I wish I was dead. Which is kind of strange because in our new generation of humor, it's like, it's very like, very edgy in that sense. Do you understand? People like that edgy, depressing humor. Our parents' generation never had that. It's kind of oddly new. And if you look at rates of depression and suicide and things like body dysmorphia, both in men and women. Interesting thing about body dysmorphia for men, it's celebrated amongst men. What is body dysmorphia for men? Do you know? What would it be? Body dysmorphia for women is losing fat. Body dysmorphia for men is not feeling like they're big enough. Right? One of them is an extreme measure, the other one leads to an extreme measure. Right? But that's celebrated amongst men, so it's overlooked. Just like that the rise of insecurities and depressions have dramatically changed in the last several decades, right? A lot of that comes from the lack of understanding, the lack of patience that makes people feel insecure in their current life, right? Leads to things like depression. So what I want to talk to you about is about how to attain that conviction. So if we look at, for example, car accidents, it is unbelievable in a lot of Western Sydney suburbs that there's a much higher rate of car accidents. And where does that lead to? Why do people drive recklessly? When I go to India, when I go to Pakistan, bro, people are crazy, man. What's wrong with these people? It's like they have a death wish. You know what's crazy? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about the same thing at the time in Saudi Arabia, in Hijaz. He says, loosening the reins of your horse, you are flirting with death. He says that. Mahyud, you know how people like, they drive with their hand like that? They're going 150 on the highway. What makes people do that? This lack of conviction, I'll explain it to you. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, عليهم الصلاة والسلام, has said, indeed, this world is inherently designed where pleasures are fleeting. All pleasures that you experience, they're short-lived. They only lived at that time. If you go have fun with your mates, whatever you do, if you play with a bit of risk, whatever it is, it's fleeting. It just stops as soon as the fun stops. He says, whereas consequences are inherently prolonged for some reason. Right? Sometimes you get injured. You get injured for the rest of your life. Sometimes you need a hip replacement. And you can't walk properly. I busted my knee in basketball. Bro, it takes like 2 years to recover that. You know what I'm saying? But I had a little fun. I was a bit reckless during that game. And the fun's over. And now I have to walk with a limp or something. That's how it is. Consequences are seemingly prolonged. There are a lot of people in Australia born out of wedlock. Where the guy bounces. You know what born out of wedlock is? It's like born without a marriage. Sometimes many people don't even know the husband. And the child is born without a father. This is big in Australia. If you work in the tax office, the child support agency, it's humongous in Australia. Right? And so people have fun in the moment. The fun's over and then, whoa, the double line on the tag strip. They find out something too late, and the consequence of a child growing up without a father it's immense and it has a huge societal pressure. But people don't think like that. They don't think of risk versus reward. Do you get what I'm saying? When patience it's a fruit of conviction. It comes with this conviction of the wise man. He knows that pleasures are fleeting and there's consequences, and such that he is vigilant, and out of his vigilance he is cautious, and out of his cautious nature he is patient. It's not that's what I'm trying to tell you, that these attributes in Islam, they're not just random things to seem pious. You know what's interesting? A lot of these traits in Islam have been heavily commoditized to some extent. If you look at, you go to Auburn, you look at these Salafis. Why do they shave the mustache? And when they wear the dishdash, why is it up to halfway up the ankle? Why is that? You know why? It's so weird because the Holy Prophet said, don't let the hairs go past your lip. Right? But the way they do it is so apparent that they shave the whole mustache. The Holy Prophet says, don't let the dust catch on the edge of your pants. They would go way out overboard and they bring their pants up. You know why? Because it's more about showing that you're doing that than actually gaining the effect of it. The same way, oh, did you know it's sunnah to brush your teeth with a miswak? Homie, I don't want to see the goddamn stick in your pocket. That's disgusting, bro. It stings. But why do they do that? Because, oh, subhanAllah, it's sunnah to put in your pocket, and they've completely missed the point of cleanliness, and they've just relied on the elements that represent it. Do you know what I'm saying? The same way, like, brother, it's sunnah to wear perfume, but the guy's walking around with like a dollar store attar. It stings, bro. It smells like a goddamn toilet freshener. The Holy Prophet used to spend a lot of money on perfume. Perfume and rings. It's, if you were to calculate it equivalently, it'd be like $300 per perfume. Not many Muslims go out of their way for that. Do you get what I'm saying? They only focus on the perfume, and therefore it doesn't matter what price. Therefore, they completely miss the point. Because they're focusing on representing the elements and the attributes in Islam. That's what I'm trying to tell you, this patience thing. You can't just be patient, oh, I just sit there, and it has to be as a result of conviction. When the Holy Prophet puts on perfume, it's as a result of his faith. There is no faith without tahara. It's a hadith from Rasulullah. Do you know what I'm saying? Just like there's no body without the head, and the head represents patience. These things come as a result of your wisdom. That's what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying? I like to keep it short. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Brother Saeed, the hadith you mentioned, so Imam Ali said, what was it? Patience to belief is like the head to the body?
Yes.
No, that was incredible, because it goes straight back to the point that I was mentioning when you approach your prayer. And prayer is the first of the furuh ad-din, the branches of our religion. If it's done so without patience, you're not getting that full benefit of the prayer again. Before you've even prayed, you need that. You need that. So it's like the head to the body. You need that 100%, because that's the very first. Without the first, you can't go to the next, etc. So alhamdulillah, that's really the incredible foundation. And Brother Mustafa mentioned several incredible examples when it comes to acting rushed or impatiently or hastily. You know, children born out of wedlock, that's one of the most horrific tragedies. I don't know how it is in the Muslim world. I think it would be better, but in the Western world, I know it's very terrible. And you have situations where people jump from one partner to another, and the child is growing up in that environment. They're experiencing all kinds of abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, whatever it might be. I don't want to go any further because it gets even worse and worse. But yeah, it's truly horrific. And of course, Brother Mustafa also mentioned injuries from exercise. Something as simple as that. It really shows thinking and not acting in a rushed way. Not just because I know I've experienced those injuries myself. You know, I had knee problems for quite a while, shin problems, but alhamdulillah, it's getting a lot better. With that, inshallah, we'll open the floor for the audience members to ask anything, question, answers. inshallah, with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah, any questions? Then please. Anything? Samir? Who is it?
Shoot any question, if it is not related to the topic, what's on your mind?
Yeah. I'm looking specifically at you, Brother Sajjad. Trying to think of a question. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
I'll say something. I'll say something.
You say something.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Yes, fine.
Is it bad to have any disbelieving friends in your friend group?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So I've heard several answers from the sheikhs across different schools. Up to a certain point, it's okay. When you get too close to the point where it's affecting your own belief, your own thoughts, where it's leading you in the wrong direction, specifically when it comes to your actions, if you're getting peer pressured into doing the wrong things, most definitely not. Now, the Quran and our ahadith themselves, they encourage that closer connection amongst the group of believers. Now, when it comes to non-Muslims, it is important to have some level of interaction, particularly something I love, interfaith events, and Nabi Akram is going to have an interfaith event as well coming, I think, the Monday after next. So I think it's at the Hadhrat Center, inshallah ta'ala. Anyone wants to join, then go check out their Instagram. I feel those are really important, helping establish common ground, building a sense of communion within the broader community. But as far as close friendships go, that's something I wouldn't encourage. Personally, having listened to the answers of the different sheikhs, the different scholars, that's what I would say.
No, I don't want.
Okay. That's a really good question, bro. I appreciate you asking that kind of question. So, is it alright to have disbelieving friends, right? So I have a whole range of different friends, but what I do is I wouldn't recommend that to a whole different bunch of people, because not everyone can be quite independent in their thought. Some people are very impressionable and they can be influenced really heavily by non-Muslims, right? What's really crazy is I got Muslim friends that, because they grew up in a particular suburb, they're pro like LGBT. Do you know what I'm saying? You will be influenced heavily by your community. That's number one. And if that's the only thoughts that you've ever heard and opinions, you're going to be influenced by it. Because it's very uncomfortable to stick out like a sore thumb. Yeah. That's the truth. Do you know what I mean? And like, to be quite frank with you, at the same time, you grew up in Auburn, and like, people think that there's like a microchip in the vaccine or something. You know what I mean? There's a two-way street. If you talk to like your atheist friend, you may improve your reasoning. Some of my atheist friends, they're only there because their reasoning improves my like intellect. Do you know what I'm saying? Some of my Muslim friends, they're there because they remind me of God. Do you know what I'm saying? And they inspire me with the love of Ahlul Bayt, which my atheist friends cannot do. At the same time, they can't have like intellectual political talks, which my atheist friends can do. Do you know what I'm saying? A lot of my atheist friends are very left-wing, kind of very socialist kind of people that understand the ethics behind wealth distribution, or ethics behind Medicare, and ethics behind superannuation. My Muslim friends, bro, they don't care about that. They don't care. They only care about, which political party gets me the visa the quickest or something. That's all they care about. Bro, I can't have intelligent conversation with someone like that. Do you know what I mean? There's a hadith that I really thought was really interesting. Imam Jafar al-Sadiq عليهم والسلام, he was mentioning the hadith from Nabi Isa alayhi salam, which is 2,000 years ago. Nabi Isa alayhi salam says, fill your circle of friendships with those who improve your reasoning. It's really important. Kamran and I always talk about this, how your friends eventually will have an impact on you. The longer you spend time with them, your reasoning gets shaped around their reasoning. People get radicalized by their friends. They get red-pilled on YouTube shorts by their friends about Andrew Tate or something. Everybody has a hive mind. There's very few independent thought kind of people, right? And so your friends will influence you. If your friends say, hey, bro, do you really believe in that? Do you really believe the soil from Karbala is good, this and that? You'll think like you're an idiot for standing out. That's the truth. The more you hang around these kind of people, if they mock your religion, you have two paths. You either defend your religion, or you're like, yeah, you know what? That's my mom. She said that. It's probably, and then you lose your religion. And a lot of people go down this path. A lot of my Muslim friends become semi-atheists, where they come to the mosque, Assalamu alaikum, uncle, how are you? But they're like, oh man, I had to go to the mosque last night, bro. You don't even know what they talk about. A lot of Muslim guys are like that. You know what I mean? Their friends influence them. Yeah, the Muslims, they're kind of against the gays. I'm sorry, bro. I'm apologetic. They become apologetic Muslim. They become this Muslim. They become that to fit their friends. You know what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, whoever you love the most in this world, if that guy goes to heaven, you go to heaven. If he goes to hell, you go to hell. He says it doesn't matter about all your salat and your zakats and your sawms. None of that matters. If you love a person and in that person, he shames certain things about religion. He puts the Prophet's name down. There are a lot of people like that. There are some friends that will make you feel embarrassed for being Muslim. If you truly love that person, if he goes to hell, bro, you go to hell. Because your heart really testifies to what you value. And you know that saying, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. It shows who you respect, how you respect your own self. A lot of my friends, like Kamran and I will always talk about this. A lot of young people, they like hanging out with their mates and just cracking jokes and throwing the fishing rod and dumb talks. They don't increase their intelligence. All they talk about, bro, do you reckon Manchester United will win it this time? That's all the conversations. They stay at a very stagnant. There's nothing wrong with talking about that. But that can't be the beginning and the end of your whole conversation and friendship. But what that means is, if that person goes to heaven and you have valued that, dude, he's my best mate, you know what I mean? He's always got my back. He's got nothing in his head. He hasn't changed you one bit to any direction. If he goes to hell, you go to hell, bro. So when you see your friends, you have to draw a line. This is very important. If you have non-Muslim friends and you say this guy does not respect religion and he's not going to change, you have to draw an imaginary line where you can't let your heart be so attached to that person. That's the truth. This is my honest, I've gone through this in life, my honest advice. Otherwise, you will become slowly like that guy because of your love and your respect for him. Do you know what I mean? You have to draw those lines. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Beautiful answer by Brother Mustafa, very detailed and a lot more elaborate than I could put it. But alhamdulillah, one thing I just wanted to add on top of that, Brother Mustafa was mentioning how your friends influence you. I think that can also be a two-way street sometimes. Sometimes you can, instead of them being a negative influence on you, you can be a positive influence on them. So depending on how much knowledge you have, how much certainty you have in your religion, how well grounded your reasoning is. As Brother Mustafa mentioned, reasoning is quintessential to Islam. It's of the utmost importance. Imam Ali alayhi salam once said, what was the Arabic? It was, right, so the English was, nothing can withstand the changing times except for reason, aql. As time changes and societies evolve, لا يستعان على الدهر إلا بالعقل. Nothing can withstand the changing times except for reason. So really, if you have those well-grounded arguments, you understand the religion, and you're able to convey it in a meaningful manner, I think that can go a long way in terms of, instead of your friends influencing you in the wrong direction, you influencing them in the right direction. So I believe the greater your level of faith, the stronger those interactions can be. That's how I see it. And Brother Saeed, all right. First, dear Brother Sajjad, please welcome. Yeah. So what manifestation of spirituality can you see from Karbala, and how can you translate that into this era, essentially? All right. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I think that question itself, it really requires a whole lecture, because when you're talking about Karbala, pretty much I've heard it said everything we have in Islam today, it's all because of Karbala. All of the lessons in prayer, patience, generosity, all of the lessons, the principles of the Quran are embodied in Karbala. And just to mention, and tonight we talked about patience of Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salatu wassalam in the Furat. He's lifting up that water. His heart is burning. That's how thirsty he is. Yet he does not drink. Look at the lessons in prayer. The companions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam are praying as the arrows are flying towards them and striking them. How can we manifest that today? People in Gaza are praying as the missiles are falling on them from the enemies. Look at the parallel here. It's truly incredible and powerful. And inshallah ta'ala, from Karbala to Gaza, inshallah, Allah destroys all of the oppression and the injustice. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
I thank God to have helped you to ask that beautiful question. I will say what I've learned from it. Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, Alam Dar of Imam al-Hussein. And you know the Alam Dar, whilst the flag is up, you know the army is good. The head of the army is good. The army is still standing if the flag is still being raised. The Alamdar of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, of Abbas alayhi salam, when he came to the water, when it came to holding the flag, when it came to holding the water, when it came to defending himself, in fact, he even made a poet whilst being attacked, whilst his hands have been attacked. Who can make a poem whilst they've been attacked and their hands have been attacked? Who has the capacity to do that? Except the Alamdar Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. What I loved about him is he did muwasat. He did condolence, consolation, how do you say it in English? Commiseration, standing with Imam Hussein. So he stood with the Imam of his time. He could feel what Imam Hussein is going through. The hardship, the thirst, the responsibility, the respect of Islam. And he didn't drink water. And he even said a poem for the water, poem for defending. As he's going back, he said, also another poem, very beautiful, you can check it out. So I said, what if we can do muwasat for Imam al-Mahdi, the Imam of our time? Ajjalallahu farajah wa sahala makhraja. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, for the love of Imam al-Mahdi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. So what if we can do muwasat for the Imam? What did he tell us? How can we do muwasat? Imam Ali alayhi salam, and I'm going to reflect it on Imam Mahdi. He says, your Imam has taken, the minimal food. He's zahid. He doesn't want to take too much from this world. He prays. He has all the taqwa attribution, Imam Ali. So help your Imam with what you can do. His wasiyah was, his will was taqwa, piety. Piety requires patience. So if we could learn more, the most important responsibility we have right now, which is the brain, that's what makes us different from animals, the brain, is to learn more so that we know how to stand and do muwasat and stand with Imam al-Mahdi. That's what I've learned from Abu Abbas alayhi salam. Thanks for asking. And I will give it to Brother Mustafa just after I answer the question for... So what kind of what kind of friends were you talking about? What kind of trust were you looking for?
I was talking about disbelieving friends. Let's just say they were Christians
Okay,
or just atheists.
beautiful.
Non-Muslims.
Okay, non-Muslims.
Friends.
So there is a general rule from Imam Ali alayhi salam: the friend is not a friend until he told you the truth. The good things about you, he says it, and the bad things about you, he also tells you about it, but he wouldn't go and, says it to other people. He holds it with himself. He has a real core friendship kind of person. And a friend's meaning is because they say the truth to you. And yeah, so if you could see that from them, I think they're not trying to backstab you. They're telling you the truth, and time doesn't really change them against you. I guess you could take them as friend to a certain level. There's things which is within the friend zone and things not within the friend zone. Not within the friend zone, keep them, and within the friend zone, you would notice them. Yes, so there's things that you can keep in and out of a friendship with friends. Thank you.
Ahsan. One interesting thing that comes to mind about the lessons from Karbala, a little bit closer, was when I watched Fahrenheit 9/11. Have you seen that movie?
Documentary, yeah.
Documentary. Who's it by again? Michael Moore?
Yes.
So Fahrenheit 9/11 was about a documentary about Bush's invasion of Iraq, right? This is early 2000s kind of documentary, long time ago. I really encourage you to watch it. And again, Michael Moore is a very left-wing guy, Talib. Don't you reckon these guys are not held down by any biases, right? And that inspires his intellectualism to be pursued on the right path. That's what I was saying. Like, the only people who talk about Iraq and Bush's invasion are the Shias in Iraq and like the atheist left-wing guys. No one else talks about it. Christians don't talk about that, right? But what he's talking about, it was how America destroyed these people, and including their religion. And what happened was, there's one scene in that documentary where I saw a Shia grandmother say, "How can there be a God?" She's saying this in Arabic with a chador. She said, "How can there be a God that allows this to happen?" And I remember watching that as a kid. And in Iraq, you're talking about 500,000 plus. Women and children being killed, civilians, and these people witnessed that, right? And then on top of that, the Shias witnessed Saddam Hussein killing them, putting them in torture camps. You know what I mean? Pulling their fingernails out and killing them and this, that. And these Shias, I was watching them, they said, "How can Allah allow this to happen? Indeed, there is no God." And that broke my heart when I heard that. Because you and I, we go through hardships, we have to endure patience. If you were to see your mother being killed and your father being imprisoned and tortured, and you see your sister being killed, you reach a state where your faith is really challenged. Do you know what I'm saying? This is what happened in Karbala. The women and the children were paraded. They saw their fathers and their uncles beheaded, and their head was on a spear. Can you imagine seeing that with your own father? It's not easy, right? And so your patience is really challenged. And something like that, you have to understand that the imams, people give attributes to the imams as if they don't experience pain or something like that. As if their patience is somehow granted by an angel. They feel the pain. They feel more pain than you and I because they have more empathy than you and I. This is Rasulullah. This is Ahlul Bayt. Their pain and their suffering was immense. And so when we see something like that, we have to remember that they are our leaders. And we are the inheritors of their patience. And as Shias, the Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, if you wish to be my follower, be ready for the arrows to come towards you. This is what we have taken up. If you don't want to be here, the door is right there. You don't have to be a Shia. The pubs are over there, the clubs are over there. You don't have to be here. If you are here because you testify to the haqq of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. One more question or all good? Okay. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Jazakumullahu khairan, everyone present, and my dear panelists, Brother Saeed and Brother Mustafa. It's always a pleasure to be up here with you both, and inshallah ta'ala we can continue these discussions down the line. Alhamdulillah, it's a big learning process for me, and I pray it's a big learning process for you both as well, and for everyone listening, whether it's in the audience or online. Inshallah ta'ala, we conclude the program with manqabat by Brother Jahangir and possibly nasheed by Brother Mustafa if he's up for it. If not, fully understand. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. I would request everyone to recite along with me, please. ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, क्या हुसैन है, ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। खुदा के दी का ना खुदा, खुदा के दी का ना खुदा, हर इब्तिदा की इब्तिदा, करम की इंतहा हुसैन है। ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, क्या हुसैन है, ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। करे जो कोई हमसरी, किसी की क्या मजाल है, जहां में हर लिहाज से हुसैन बेमिसाल है। ये हो चुका है फैसला, ये हो चुका है फैसला, न कोई दूसरा खुदा, न कोई दूसरा हुसैन है। न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, क्या हुसैन है, न पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है जिसकी फिक्र करबला, हुसैन वो दिमाग है। ये पंजतन की अंजुमन का पांचवा चिराग है। हसन का पहला हम सफर, हसन का पहला हम सफर, अली का दूसरा पिसर, इमाम तीसरा हुसैन है। ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, क्या हुसैन है, ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। हदायते हुसैन पर अमल करो हुसैनियों, रहेंगे हम बहिश्त में, यकीन रखो हुसैनियों। कबूल होगी हर दुआ, कबूल होगी हर दुआ, किसी से क्यों डरे भला, हमारा वास्ता हुसैन है। ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है, क्या हुसैन है, ना पूछिए कि क्या हुसैन है। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व अला मुहम्मद। आपकी खिदमत में मौला इमाम सज्जाद अलैहिस्सलाम के चंद अशआर बारे दीगर सलावत। वहाँ पे काबे का क़िबला दिखाई देता वहाँ पे काबे का किबला दिखाई देता है, जहाँ हुसैन का बेटा दिखाई देता है तेरे छालों का सदका ये सैयदे सज्जाद, जो आज चांद चमकता दिखाई देता है। रसन भी हो गई आजाद पाए आबिद से, यजीद तख्त पे जकड़ा देता है, वहाँ पे काबे का किबला दिखाई देता है। जना में जाओगे सज्जाद की रजा के बगैर, तुम्हें भी ख्वाब में क्या क्या दिखाई देता है, वहाँ पे काबे का किबला दिखाई देता है। मौला अब्बास की शान में ना मोहब्बत ना मवद्दत ना विला मांगी है, ना मोहब्बत ना मवद्दत ना विला मांगी है, ना फजाइल ना फजीलत ना सना मांगी है, ना कभी नुसरत इस्लाम की दौलत मांगी, ना ये तलवार चलाने की अदा मांगी है, ना ये जर्रार ना कर्रार ना खैबर में अलम, ना ये आंखों की मुसीबत ना शिफा मांगी है, ना कभी नफ्स ही मांगा ना शब हिजरत जान, ना ये बिस्तर ना खालिक की रजा मांगी है, ना ये वशम्स का चेहरा ना ये वल्लैल की जुल्फ, ना ये दुल्लाह ना आवाज़े खुदा मांगी है, ना सुलेमान की हुकूमत ना वो कुव्वत मांगी, ना अंगूठी ना ये दहलीज़े अता मांगी है, ना कभी हजरत दाऊद का लहजा मांगा, ना कभी गैब के पर्दे की सना मांगी है। तो उम्र भर जिसने ना मांगा हो खुदा से कुछ भी, उसने अब्बास के आने की दुआ मांगी है। बर मोहम्मद आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम। दो तीन अशआर मुला गाजी की शान में बर मोहम्मद आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम।
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. فوالله لا أخشى من النار فوالله لا أخشى من النار في غد وأنتم ولاة الأمر يا آل أحمد، وها أنا أدعوكم رافعا يدي خذوا بيدي يا آل بيت محمد صلوات أميري حسين ونعم الأمير، أميري حسين ونعم الأمير، سرور فؤاد البشير النذير، سرور فؤاد البشير النذير. أميري حسين ونعم الأمير، أميري حسين ونعم الأمير، سرور فؤاد البشير النذير، سرور فؤاد البشير النذير. علي وفاطمة والدا، علي وفاطمة والدا، فهل تعلمون له من نظير، فهل تعلمون له من نظير. علي مولاه، 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 مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، مولاه، علي مولاه. I want to hear your voices. علي مولاه، علي مولاه، say it. علي مولاه، علي مولاه with me. علي مولاه، ما شاء الله. علي مولاه، 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 علي، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، علي مولاه، مولاه، علي مولاه. حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه. Your voices. حسن، ما شاء الله، ما شاء الله. ايه، حسن مولاه، حسن، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسن مولاه، مولاه، حسن مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه. How much do you love this name? حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه. Clap, clap. حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه. علي، حسين مولاه، مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، حسين مولاه، مولاه، حسين مولاه. أبو فاضل، 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 أبو فاضل،
أبو فاضل فاضل أبو فاضل أبو فاضل أبو فاضل فاضل أبو فاضل أبو فاضل أبو فاضل فاضل أبو فاضل مهدي مولاه 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 مولاه مهدي مولاه مهدي مولاه مهدي مولاه مولاه مهدي مولاه مهدي مولاه مهدي مولاه مولاه مهدي مولاه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. جماعة صلوات.
متوجز يا رب. السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله.